Hey everyone, Pratiti Pathak here. Welcome to Unpacking Brain Drama, where we talk about real life experiences, the challenges, and the obstacles. Sometimes we use them to block ourselves, sometimes we use them to grow and evolve. Here's what I want to say: obstacles are not the things blocking our path, obstacles are the path. So, in other words, we have to grow through what we go through. So, join me as we have some amazing conversations with some amazing guests. Let's go.
What's up, Wednesday? Here we are unpacking our brain drama. It's the middle of your morning. It's the middle of your week. And we are in for a treat for another solo episode with me. So sorry we don't get to talk to somebody fun and you just get me. But today I want to talk about something that I think is going on a lot for us right now. And one of those things is first of all, let me just tell you guys, sorry about the audio video. Might be a little bit different today. I'm not in my home office. I'm actually at my Keller Williams office. We have our team meeting today, and every team meeting at our office is amazing because we get this luxurious, amazing lunch every single month. And in November and December, of course, the food is quite amazing. Normally, we all bring something and bake something and make something for our Thanksgiving Day meal for our meeting. And usually I do like a keto cheesecake. I'm known for making my beautiful keto cheesecake. I love it so much. This year I skimped out totally and I'm just making some cranberry sauce, but it's so good. I can't wait for us to have it. I'm looking forward to our meeting and our lunch that literally is right after our time together right now. So today I want to talk about kind of like almost a little bit of a continuum of last week. We talked about anxiety and understanding what anxiety is and where it comes from. Most of the time it comes from different small little traumas or things that go on in our lives, right? Or things that we perpetuate that might. Today we're going to talk a little bit about post-traumatic growth. What? We've heard a lot about post-traumatic stress, which is something that we think happens when we are traumatized, right? It's actually called like a disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. So let's talk about what post-traumatic growth is. When I first heard that, it was from my mentor, Brooke Castillo, and it blew my mind, right? It was about being anti-fragile, right? When I think of something fragile, it's like, be careful, it might break. Then what happens when it gets broke? How do we repair it? And will it ever be the same again? That's kind of where the post-traumatic growth comes in. So let's think about trauma. There's before the trauma took place, right? The pre-trauma. And then there's the actual thing that happens, which is the trauma, whatever that may be. It may be something physical. It may be something emotional. And then there's after the trauma, the post-trauma. And what do we do with it, right? What is the post-trauma? It's how we process the actual traumatic experience, whether it was something physical or whether it was something emotional. And it could have been even a combination of both, you know what I mean? I know you guys, if you guys have been following me, you may have seen an episode where I did with an EMDR therapist. And a lot of times when we go through something majorly traumatic, we end up seeking really serious help to alleviate the trauma. And one thing that we do that can hurt us is going to avoiding, medication or alcohol or food or drugs even, right? There's things that we do to try to avoid the trauma or the processing of it. And one of those things that happens when we avoid is that we actually don't process. And it may seem like it's the right thing to do because it's so painful that we don't even want to look at it. But when we think about avoiding it, what we're actually doing is almost re-traumatizing ourselves every time that we have no choice but to look at it. And when we think about trauma, very rarely do we think about it from a growth perspective, right? How do we actually grow from the trauma? As some of you know, if you don't, and this is your first introduction, hello, I'm Pratiti Pathak, and I am a goals coach, a post-traumatic growth coach, actually, right? I'm helping you address all of the areas of our lives, right? And then grow from what we may be already programmed to do over and over on autopilot, and then how we take a look at that and then maybe change some things to grow and evolve from what we've been currently doing. Most of the time, what ends up being discussed is different things that we go through in our childhood, in our lives, whether it's marriage, divorce, loss. I'm somebody who's lost a child, so I know deeply what it is to go through some severe emotional pain and trauma. And with that being said, I am also somebody who has grown and evolved through that trauma. If you're somebody who's listened to my podcast on Audible or on Spotify, you'll hear me say in the intro, we have to grow through what we go through. And that is the only way to actually address your life as it's happening, right? It's not just things that happen in our childhood, it's also things that happen ongoing. Right. And there's a lot of things that got talked about in the EMDR session, which was traumatic, but maybe it wasn't this one big thing, right? If we've gone through a physical attack, or we've been tortured, or we've been raped, or if we've been in war, you know what I mean? Or we've been in this battlefield of some sort. And I like to look at that as a really good analogy, because sometimes we feel like we're on a battlefield, and the battlefield is our life, and life just continues to happen. And so much of it isn't in our control. The loss of my son was definitely not in my control. But what we do after the trauma, like when we're in the trauma, we're kind of in survival mode. And that's super necessary for our survival, right? And what happens after the trauma is we kind of stay in that survival mode by avoidance, by numbing ourselves out, by retelling our story over and over and over, is how we traumatize ourselves over and over, right? We continue the suffering. There was suffering that happened in that moment or in that traumatic experience. And for some of us, maybe it was ongoing. Maybe you were being abused on a regular basis. I think about how we choose to tell that story over and over when we replay the whole scenario in our mind. For sure, we're not bringing it up accurately. That's number one. And when I think about that, I really go to when I was a little girl and I got picked on and I got bullied a lot, right, in elementary school. And if y'all are out there and you were in elementary school, you know who you were picking on me when I was tiny. But the story that I told over and over most likely wasn't accurate, right? I may have gotten bullied here and there, but in my mind, for sure, I was bullied every day, ongoing, constantly being picked on and being mistreated. But the truth is, I probably was bullying myself all of that time that I wasn't being bullied by somebody else. So, let me think about that. Part of it's true, right? I was being bullied every day, but was it being done by other people? And that is a huge part of going through the trauma and then working towards the growth part of it. Because when we retell our story, we stay in it. And it's okay to tell the story. Like today, I'm somebody who talks about my son all the time, which I always did. Just the story around it has changed, right? Yes, the story is still the same, that he's no longer with me physically, that he did have a fatal accident. And I used to tell the story as more on the role of being a victim, not not just a victim of the loss, but like I was in the victim role where I kept victimizing myself and being the villain of that story. So it was like I was re-traumatizing myself over and over by the way that I was identifying with my story. You with me? And today, how I bring him into every single conversation and bring him into every single room is done on a very different mindset and a very different story. It is, the story hasn't changed on how his accident took place, but how I've identified with it. I am still his mother. I bring him into every room with love and compassion and honor of him and our love together, our relationship together, the bond that we had. We tell stories about him. We bring laughter around him. Very different than the constant sadness and crying and like debilitating pain that I was going through on a regular basis. And it wasn't daily, it was like hourly, every minute. And just for this reason on how much growth I've had just from that one very, very difficult experience of my life. The most difficult. One of the things that I do to honor him is I am constantly engaged with other people who have lost children and help them through that trauma. So just as a little side note, I'm going to be putting the links in for this, but I am offering a free bereaved parent workshop tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm here on the East Coast. And if anybody has lost a child, I would love for you to join me in my free workshop. And there is no obligation. You're not going to be called on if you don't want to. You can absolutely share in the group if you'd like to, but you don't have to. You can just sit and listen, because I am going to be sharing some really valuable tools that can be used, especially around this time of year, which I find happened to be a very difficult time in my post-traumatic growth journey, was around the holidays and a lot of family gatherings and attending gatherings where my son wasn't going to physically be there. He wasn't going to be at the table. And I really learned beautiful tools on how to bring him to the table and into the room emotionally and spiritually, which is where he was, right? So I am having that workshop tomorrow. It's going to be completely free. There's no obligation of anything further. But I'd like to share with you some tools that can really help you navigate through the holidays. And during this time, my son's birthday was December 29th and still is. So right between Christmas and New Year's, and just the month of December in itself was just a very difficult time, right? We are going through reliving things over and over in our mind, which is where the trauma continues to take effect. The only time that we start to grow from it is when we start to really address what's going on and face the reality of it. Because every time we avoid it, it's kind of like we're arguing with our own reality by telling ourselves repeatedly that something should not have happened. And I heard Byron Katie say once that you can argue with reality and our past every single day, but you will only lose 100% of the time. And it really hit home for me and kind of forced me to sit with my reality, I guess, right? And I heard people saying to me all the time, you're so strong, you're so resilient. But that is a muscle that has to be worked, right? That is something that takes effort. And that is something that it can be challenging and difficult, especially if you don't have the right support. And when we think about how other people can support us, sometimes we don't have that support system, right? I happen to have family and friends who love me and were very supportive. And I had my son's family and my son's friends that were very supportive and still are, right? They still reach out to me. But what if we don't have that support? How do we support and love ourselves, right? You ever heard the term like what doesn't kill you will make you stronger? Yes, that is true. Sometimes we wished it did kill us, right? Because we don't want to work at that strength. And it's not because there's anything wrong with you. A lot of times we start a lot of blame on ourselves for what we're going through, and we make it so challenging to even get ourselves out of bed, let alone in front of other people. But what I will share with you is the more you can allow yourself your own vulnerability, love yourself, feel some compassion for yourself because you are going through a difficult time. And if you have to seek medical attention for it, try really hard not to just go for medication, because that is another way of numbing and avoiding and resisting facing our own reality. And I'm not saying that there isn't a place for some medication to help us not be completely debilitated. Just be very careful on how you do that, and make sure you get lots of support and supervision during that time, and have conversation ahead of time on how you're going to allow medication to help you through that time, and have like a set date and goal around it so that you're not like forever in it. If you're somebody like me and has gone through loss, or maybe you lost your business or tons of money, money can be made back, business can be rebuilt. But if you're somebody who's gone through loss of a child, a parent, a loved one, a spouse, anybody that is important in your life, that is a permanent situation that is going to stay with you for the rest of your lives. So be very careful on trying to take control of that by using medication, because medication shouldn't be the rest of your life or long-term care. Make sure you do that as short-term care. You guys, if you want to know more about post-traumatic growth, there are so many books out there. I will link them in the show notes. I think there's one that's called like Survived, or What Won't Kill You, I think is one of them. So I will have to go back into my library, but there is a book that I read, and I apologize for not having the author's name right in the top of my head, because it just made me think of it, is this concept of anti-fragility. There is a book called Anti-Fragile. It is an amazing book, and it goes so hand in hand with post-traumatic growth. And what it talks about is the beating up of something in order for it to become anti-fragile, not just not breaking it and handling it with care, but actually beating it up and strengthening it from that place of beating it up. So I'll give you some examples. A really great example that I like to use is when you think about our physical body, right? If we go to the gym, if we're somebody who wants to get muscle, we have to like break down our muscle. This is muscle right there, 53-year-old muscle right there. You have to break down the muscle, tear it down in order to strengthen it and build it up, right? And I also like to use the analogy or the example of something like Niagara Falls, right? Its beauty comes from the erosion that is taking place of the rocks, like kind of like eroding away, right? That's where these falls started coming from. So if I think about anti-fragility in the same sense as post-traumatic growth, it makes me think of this, again, I'm like brain dead today because I got so much going on this week, but there was an artist who, like, there was a vase that was broken and it had to get repaired. It was this expensive vase. It was wonderful, and he repaired it with this gold solder. I'm just going to say it was gold solder. Again, I will try to put that in the notes for you guys, but it was gold, and so it like highlighted all of the cracks and the damage, right? So sometimes we feel that way, that the trauma that we've gone through has damaged us in some way. It's broken us in some way. And for sure, we can never go back to being who we were. I know for 100% fact, I'm definitely not the same woman, not the same mother that I was before my son's accident as I am today. I feel like I am so much stronger, so much more amazing, so much wiser, and so much more resilient, and so much more able to help myself and those around me because of the breaks and the tear downs and the damage, right? Have you ever heard the term, you have to have a breakdown in order to have a breakthrough? You know, you have to break down before you have to have a breakthrough. Same thing with, you have to hit rock bottom and the only way is up. Those are all examples of post-traumatic growth. If you want to know more about this, I really encourage anybody, especially if you've lost a child for sure, I encourage you to even, sit in the dark and have your camera on. Anybody who shows up, I require you to have your camera on because we're all in the room being vulnerable about our children, but definitely sign up for the workshop. And if you're somebody that is going through difficult times because of the adversity in the world and in your life, whether it's in your relationships, in your jobs, in your careers, financial devastation, whatever it is, I would love for you to reach out to me, and I would love to share some really valuable tools that can help you through some very, very difficult times. So I hope this has been super, super powerful for you guys. I'm going to cut it just a little bit short today. I'm not even sure what time it is. Just going to try to cut it a little bit short today because I have a meeting to attend, and I just want you guys to know I love you so much, and is why, even with maybe some shoddy video and audio, which you guys are pretty much used to me showing up as a robot most of the time anyway with all my glitching. I actually think I don't even know if I glitched as much today as I normally do, but please reach out to me. Please tell me what you think about these solo episodes. I love hearing from you, and I appreciate when you reach out to me, send me some DMs. I love when I hear from you guys. It's so elating for me, and it just makes me feel so loved by you guys as much as I love you too. So have a beautiful day, and I can't wait to be with you again next week. Same time, same place. What's Up Wednesday. We're going to be here to unpack our brain drama because we all have it. We've all gone through things. That's one thing I know for sure. And I know that we make it mean something terrible about us. And I know that because each and every person I talk to has some form of I'm not good enough in some way, shape, or form. And it's usually because of all the different experiences we've gone in life and made it mean something terrible about ourselves. So I love you, and I look forward to seeing so many of you tomorrow at the workshop. And I look forward to hearing from you. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Thank you for listening to Unpacking Brain Drama podcast. You'll find links for all the things mentioned below in the show notes. And it would be incredibly awesome if you would take a quick moment to leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen. If you'd like to be considered as a guest on our podcast, be sure to go to www.resultsbydesigncoaching.com for a free 30-minute coaching session. Thanks so much, guys. See you next time.